or you don't need a good experienced person, right? The Cognizant internal IT is mix of people. There are good experienced people and there are good people who are fresh out of college, and that's why you see all these best-in-class interfaces and all these things, right? So even though there are so many applications, we have a concept called as collection. What it basically does is it connects all these applications for a specific purpose, and it creates a smooth workflow for all these things. Either those applications can be individually used, or those applications can be accessed via collections, which gives the end-to-end flow of this. On top of it, there are lots of cool things that people like to do, right? Which is like I show the virtual cupboard, right? Which probably in an organization would not exist, right? But you see the kind of impact that it is making, right? It is 1.5 million hits, which means it's producing so much of associate. We call our employees as associate delight to it, right? We encourage all such apps also apart from those business apps that we have.
A lot of the applications that are built and used by your team members. You also mentioned the PeopleSoft application that served as a back, at the back end. What was the deployment style for that one? And so when you talk about, DevOps and continuous development, how relevant is it for larger scale enterprise level applications?
Sure. That's a great, right? There is a significant investment made on some of those big enterprise scale applications, right? For instance, PeopleSoft application that you had mentioned. Are we going to rip and replace and write every single one of them? Absolutely no, right? So that's why what I have shown is when I click on this, it basically opens the PeopleSoft screen directly, right? So we call those applications as connector applications. What we basically done is we have those applications that are product that has been purchased or investments that has been made. We basically take those and do minor tweaks and make it easily accessible for the associates, right? So the example that I was giving is an approval. Here there is an approval, right? So when I click on it, it actually opens PeopleSoft application. We have not completely rewritten PeopleSoft application. Rather, how we have enhanced it is we have made a single sign-on onto it, and we have ensured that when they click on it, people typically takes 5 or 6 different clicks to reach to the approval screen. They know they don't need to go through all these things, and it just comes at one step. And this is how we have leveraged all the existing investment that Cognizant has made.
Sure, but put in a new enterprise application.
Yeah.
Would you use this method, or would you use a regular waterfall methodology?
Okay, so if it is this process, right? It will go through the DevOps process, and it will be one of the new applications here. So that's a strategy that has been set by our CIO, right? Basically, whenever you develop certain applications, it has to be based on that. But it doesn't mean that Cognizant is not going to procure products, or what if some acquisition happens, right? There are enterprise applications that comes as part of this. So those will be enhanced, and it will be integrated as part of this systems.
Just token of appreciation from Professor Mitra. A warm round of applause for Prakash. Thanks. So we'll break for lunch. We are behind schedule, but we have buffer time to break, and we'll be back 5 minutes past 2 for the next session. Covered up the things. We have buffer, so don't worry about the time. We are allowing questions to be asked. I believe that's more important. And one promise is that the session will end on time. So that will not be a problem. And we'll make sure that each and every questions will also get answered. So we are managing the time. So just leave that on us. So we have our next presenter, Mr. Olivia Poulard. He's a transformational IT leader in a company called SITA. His topic is Agile Factory Model, where he'll be presenting a case study, his own company's case study, which transformed legacy apps into next-gen systems. So let's hear what Olivier has to say.
Namaste. मेरा नाम है Olivier. मैं यहाँ खुश हूँ. Good enough? The rest will be in English. So quickly, my background: 20+ years of software development, covering the full software development lifecycle, and I mean full, from inception through technical support and customer support. Before I start my presentation, I thought that maybe I would share with you some of the most memorable events in my professional career, which explains some of the things here and why I'm so interested in DevOps. As an intern, long time ago, I had a little bit more hair, I was on a production line, just as an intern, to learn about factories and that kind of stuff. And very quickly I could obviously assemble things like I was asked to do, and determine that there were process flaws and design flaws that didn't make it easy to assemble things. So you can imagine now, you're the engineer who has designed all this stuff, and then you don't care about what happens on the assembly line. The second event, this was, just unlike you can't hear it, this was in France, by the way. The second event happened in America. In America, I was in charge of software development for some products, some software products. And one summer, the entire customer service team went on vacation. And we were asked, us, the techies, the engineers, the people who know everything, to actually step up to the plate and be on the phone. Instead of doing engineering work, we were on the phone, answering phone calls from actual customers. It was quite an enlightenment. We discovered that everything we thought was so perfect was not that perfect. So that was quite interesting. Subsequently, and actually for the last 12 years, I've been responsible for software engineering as well as technical support. So they always go like there. And needless to say that when you are responsible and you own the technical support, you think, or you start thinking seriously about how to reduce your cost and your headaches, especially in support. Now, one interesting story, for instance, would be that in 2009, at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I think Matthew mentioned that earlier, at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 26th of December, the day after Christmas, that was in America, I got a phone call saying our system is down. It took us 22 hours to bring it back up. Business critical system for the airlines. We learned quite a bit again from that experience. But again, my people were on the call. It was not just the data center being on the call and trying to fix the problem. Everybody was on deck trying to fix the problem, or at least understand the problem and then try to find a short-term solution before we could actually fix the real problem. It still took 22 hours to get back online. Needless to say that the airlines were not too happy about that. At least we recovered the system. None of the data was lost. That was a positive thing. In 2008 is when I started Agile projects. And that was for the baggage portfolio. So now, you're not probably familiar with all what SITA, what we do at SITA, but we pretty much cover all the needs of airlines and airports. And that includes mission critical systems, like all the baggage systems, the IT systems behind baggage management, all the checking systems at the airports. In fact, most likely you will have used, without knowing it, a SITA system or something that came from SITA. This is the story of what I would call an unusual project or program. We are an unusual company. We do unusual things. And because we do a lot of unusual things, we do it the very unusual way. And I hope that you will be interested in this story. But before I start with the beginning of the story, I thought that I would tell you what happened at the very end. And the project was almost dying, essentially. We were ready to write it up after 3 years. I was not involved in the first 3 years of this program. I was only involved in the turning it around after 3 years of problems, I would say. The first 3 years, they had adopted a waterfall model with a multitude of different processes, basically, to try to make it work. In the end, not much was developed, and it was very, very difficult actually to scale up. With the agile methodology that we put in place in the last 2 years, we managed to scale 400% compared to the waterfall model. So essentially, at peak time, we went up to 650 people, developers, analysts, and testers working together offshore. That's 650 people offshore and about 150 people in-house. Which means at peak time, 52 scrum teams. We were burning every week 9 to 12 man-years. 9 to 12 man-years every week. On average, about 2 man-years a day were burned on this project for a period of 21 months. So we had achieved vital velocity gains compared to the waterfall model, about 3 times. We had better deliveries, more consistent, and more dependable, twice a month, every half month to be exact. And we had faster deployment. With the previous methodology, which involved developers and ops and the people working separately from common specifications, at first it would take 3 months. With this methodology, it took 3 hours per application to be developed. And these are complex systems. I want you to imagine a complete airline system here. We're not just talking about just checking in a passenger. We're talking about the entire inventory of your airline, your inventory of aircraft, your inventory of flights, of seats. It's a very, very small system that is used to book your flights on a single leg, multiple legs, as a group, as a family, as an individual, in multiple classes. It's a very, very complex system. Before we took over and we turned around the program, as I said, it took 3 months to deploy the system. To this date now, it takes about 3 hours. Now, not everything was completely positive. The only drawback that I would like to point out here is the level of rework. With the waterfall model, we had about 12% rework. Rework means we had to change the requirements or end the design artifacts to accommodate the system and what the system was meant to be. So we went from 12 to 27%. But at the same time, the velocity was tripled. That explains the 2.6 versus 3.5. If you take into account the rework and you say this is waste, then we went 2.6 times faster than with the waterfall model. If you don't take into account the rework and you still consider that as work, then it was 3.5%, 3.5 times faster than the waterfall model. And essentially, the developers were not developing faster. It was just a much better collaboration between the product owners, the subject matter experts, the architects, the developers, the testers, and the ops team. That's really, really what happened here. The developers did not develop any faster than they were before. Of course, we had more developers. We had 400% more developers than we had in the waterfall model. But the fact that we could not scale up with the waterfall model was because of that collaboration, nothing else. Now, on the very positive side, let's look at quality improvement. 60% less defects, because we discovered the problems much, much earlier. And when the software went to the final acceptance test, we found 60% less defects. And because of that close collaboration, because of that velocity increase and reduction of defects, we managed to reduce the unit cost of development. So if you take the whole piece of software and you split it in units, we achieved 55% less cost per unit. Something maybe interesting also is that this year, in 2013, the program, got 3 awards, 3 very important awards. We got the 2013 UK Agile Award. We were the winners. We got the 2013 UK IT Industry Award as highly commended for this program. And also earlier in May of this year in Atlanta, the Project of the Year 2013 by the PMI from Atlanta, the second largest PMI chapter in the world. So these are significant, this is significant recognition from the industry, the software industry. So this is the end. Let's start from the beginning. What was the context? Why did we have to change? Why did we have to go from waterfall to agile? Why did we have to implement a DevOps type of model? Well, first you need to understand who SITA are. And we are a global company. We're present around the world. We serve nearly all airlines and airports. As I said earlier, it is most likely that in your lifetime you will have used some of SITA products and services without knowing it. We are in the background. The airlines are in the foreground. We are in the background, helping the airlines to operate, essentially. So all our systems are either business critical, enabling the airlines and airports to generate revenue, or mission critical, enabling the airlines and airports to operate. So needless to say that we have very tight specifications in terms of operability. What was this program about? Was about replacing the mainframe applications and rewriting them into and deploying them into a next-gen system. Okay. The 5-year program was a 5-year program. We finished it in March. 155 million budget, the largest budget at SITA. And to compare it to something you may relate to, we're talking about something of the size of Microsoft Office Professional. So I talked about unit cost earlier. We measure everything in function points, by the way. So we have all the entire system measured in function points, so we can compare. Typical airline reservation system is 38,000 units of function points. Here we're talking about the entire airline system, not just the reservation system, as I said. So what are we talking about concretely? We're talking about inventory. That's your inventory of flights and seats. Sales and service, which is reservation. So that's the term in the airline industry, sales and service. It's not just reservation. It's really selling you a service here. Departure control. Departure control is what the agents use at the airport, or what you use indirectly when you use your mobile phone or the internet to check in. That's what a departure control system is. And departure control is also involved with boarding. So think about it, you are at the gate now and you present your pass and it beeps, 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 performance, performance, performance. There's a single one. At the airport where you check in, you have multiple lines of people, multiple queues. So performance is important, but you have 10 queues, let's say. At the gate, you have 1 or 2 queues. Performance, performance, reliability. If the passengers don't get on the airplane does not take off. If it does not take off, you impact the operations of that flight, but more importantly, of the entire airline. People have connections, or that airplane will be used at the destination for another flight. Huge impact here. Weight and balance, very interesting application that most people are not aware of. This is the application with very complex algorithm that enable the airline to balance the weight of the aircraft. We're talking about passengers, we're talking about cargo, we're talking about your baggage, and we're talking about the mail. So sometimes your baggage doesn't make it. It could be, it's not necessarily because it's mishandled, but maybe because of the weight on the camera. Typically, they will offload cargo anyway first. But it's very, very important to keep you safe as passengers, and that's their prime objective. The air industry is probably, knock on wood, right? The safest, or one of the safest industry in the world. So these are the applications. What were the change drivers? We had, after 3 years, we were supposed to complete the project in 5 years, and at the time, the team of the time said it's going to take 7 years. They had spent nearly 50% of the budget and developed only 25% of the scope. And I realized after I took over this project that about half of the 25% was technical debt. It means that I had to redo that. So when I say I have 75% of the scope with 50% of the money, it's actually more like 85% of the scope with 50% of the money. We had inconsistencies, functional and technical. We had build and deployment issues. Again, 3 months of deployment. And we had quality issues. But so the change vision, we had to recover those 3 years. We had to bring those 4 years back to 2 years so that we would be within the 5-year program. And for that, we had to adopt a new way of working. And that new way of working is something that I architected, which is called the Agile Factory Framework, or Agile Factory Model. We went from multiple delivery teams to one global team. Everybody working together. It was not the SMEs on one side and the developers on the other side and the offshore partners on one side. It was a global organization. It was seen as a global organization. Test-driven development and continuous integration and build were part of this change vision, and extremely important. In fact, agile or not, without this continuous integration and build process, it would have never happened. Try to imagine now, we have deployment, we have releases every half month, therefore deployments every half month. If those deployments take 3 months, we kind of get behind every time, right? And so behind that we can never catch up. So common governance across all the vendors. So at first, with the first 3 years, we had only one offshore vendor, only one. To accelerate, we decided, and to manage our risk, we decided to go with 3 vendors because we like to make things simple. So let's go with 3 instead of 1. But you'll see that there are some benefits of doing this. If you can think about not putting all your eggs in the same basket, for instance, that's a good thing. And there's a very, very specific example here. You'll see. Very, very important. If we want to be consistent and if we want to deploy on a regular basis and have dependable releases, we need to have a common platform. So we defined that topology based on the production system, what eventually will the production system be. And all 3 vendors, offshore partners actually, when I say vendor, don't take it as vendor, it's actually really partners. They are actually partners with us. Instead of depending on various systems, we actually spent the money for all 3 to have the exact same development, integration, functional testing, and performance testing environment. Significant amount of money, but it was a drop in the bucket when you consider the impact that it would have been if we did not actually deliver consistently on a bi-monthly basis. Automation was absolutely key. Okay, the previous presenter talked about automation. It's absolutely key. We can't achieve 3 hours without automating. In fact, automation, what automation brings is two things. One is time, reduction of time in general, for building, for deploying, verifying, and running the smoke test before the acceptance team takes over. And also consistency. Errors are very often human. Machines do make only mistakes that we create. Automation is key. And enabled us to go down to 3 hours of deployment. Another little challenge here was also the distribution of the team. You can see in amber the SITA offices, and in green the 3 offshore suppliers. So 2 in India, 1 in Delhi and 1 in Bangalore, where we sit today, and 1 in Ukraine. And in fact, the Ukrainians had 3 offices, 1 in Kiev and 2 in Russia. 1 in St. Petersburg, it's a beautiful city, and Omsk, very cold. Much colder than you think it is right now, because I know you think it's cold in Bangalore. The 3 offshore vendors were responsible for different parts of the system. Now you understand integration and the importance of having a consistent development and testing environment across the board. Because now every 2 weeks, or every half month in fact, you have software coming from 5 different offices into our central repository. In fact, it's not every half month, it's every day, because we have continuous build, obviously. So they do have continuous build on site, and we do have the same continuous build. In fact, we hold the central repository of all the source code, documentation, build scripts, test scripts, everything you can imagine that is needed to have a running piece of software in production. It all started in 2007 from a very simple vision that the booking system and the departure control system and the checking system could